I hope you all are having a great afternoon. This is Atmospheric Alex here with your tropical weather forecast here over the next month or two. We're going to be taking a look here at what to expect for the rest of this hurricane season as it has been a little bit busy so far, even so we're in a quiet phase now. So here's a current look at your sea surface temperature anomalies brought to you by OISST. This is a measurement that NOAA uses to kind of calculate how warm the waters are in certain areas. So as of right now, we are currently seeing very, very warm sea surface temperatures across much of the Gulf of Mexico here. Even the Caribbean, we're looking really warm here. Temperatures right now in the mid to upper 80s in some areas, and then even going into the main development region back here, still very warm, getting into your low to mid 80s. This is all conducive for tropical development, and especially around the Gulf of Mexico, taking your attention back to this is abnormally warm. Usually we don't see sea surface temperatures upwards of 31, almost 32 degrees Celsius in July. Otherwise, that would be upper 80s to low 90s. Usually you wouldn't see waters this warm until September. This is one of the pieces of the puzzle to why this hurricane season could be very active. On top of your sea surface temperatures, we're now looking at your ocean heat content. This is the amount of heat stored in the Atlantic Ocean here. And what we can see here is, quite a lot of it here across the main development region to the Caribbean there, up into the Gulf, where we have a lot of energy that is being stored right now to save for later, essentially. These tropical cyclones, these hurricanes go over these waters, and they like to upwell a lot of water. They're so intense that they bring all this water up to the surface. And, what we're seeing here is because we have so much energy, they're now upwelling still very warm water up to the surface, which means they're able to sustain for longer periods of time. And that is, like I said, the huge concern here. And I really want to point your attention here to look, in the Caribbean here, look at these values here, upwards of 140 to 180. Even in September, do you rarely see values this high, which is yet another piece to the puzzle for such an active and potentially impactful hurricane season coming up. Now, I also wanted to look at more of your northern extent of your anomalies here. You can see all of these ocean heat content values going all the way up here to 40 degrees north. Again, you don't typically see this until September, so again, you need to be very aware this hurricane season as there is a ton of energy for these hurricanes and tropical storms to use across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so we already looked at your sea surface temperatures and concluded that they are very warm right now, even rather hot in some areas. Well, now we're going to take a look at another kind of side of our tropical triangle here, if you will. This is your wind shear anomalies over the next, looks like a month or so on the GEFS model. As we go through time, you could see very elevated belt of wind shear here across the Caribbean main development region, experiencing quite a bit of wind shear. That's another reason why we're not seeing development right now, and we're going to continue looking at this belt of persistent wind shear. It starts to fizzle a little, come back, it oscillates with the general overall tropical pattern here over time, and you'll keep seeing that here rather dominant through majority of late July, and then into August it starts to wane a little bit. And I want to turn your attention here going into mid-August. What ends up happening? Look at this. This is, right here, climatology for you, to speak the truth. You don't really have a lot of wind shear passing through those areas anymore. And that is going to allow for tropical systems to become better aligned and more favorable conditions for them to thrive in as well. Also, take a look here. You have, a nice area of well below average wind shear across portions of the more the central Atlantic regions, more towards the East Coast actually. Now, continuing to move on through mid-August, your wind shear continues to rapidly plummet off a cliff over here in the Caribbean. This right here, I can tell you what, your Pacific jet is going to really slow down, which is going to allow for much more favorable conditions for tropical development here. And we're going to continue looking, still really far below average wind shear. And I want to point you to this frame here. We are only seeing across these areas 10 to maybe 13 knots of wind shear. That's it. And that right there, that is going to get you some hurricane activity if everything else cooperates. The Gulf, even less wind shear. You all have to be on high alert here, as this could get a little bit hairy later on down the road, especially mid to late August. So with that said, let's look at your precipitation anomaly. This is stretched over a time period of a week at a time. So this can kind of give you a better overall look at your anomalies here. You can see tons of dry air that is just plaguing the main development region and the Caribbean here, which is limiting a lot of tropical development. As I've said, again, this is another piece to your tropical triangle here. You need a lot of moisture for tropical systems to thrive, and if you have too much dry air, they're going to get choked off and they're going to die. And unfortunately, I don't expect that to last much longer in the pattern here. I don't think we're going to be seeing these systems getting choked off as much as we head into August. As you could see, still, below average precipitation. This is your dry, dusty Saharan air finally getting more into the Caribbean into early August. Temporarily, this will suppress development. But look, I want to show you this rebound that occurs. Look at all these green and even some blue colors here as we head into mid-August. Just kind of be wary of that. I think that early to mid-August, you will see gyre activity. But as we head more, across forecasting period here into portions of later August, you'll begin to see some more green colors pop up here across the main development region. Big old wave train getting set up across Africa here that will end up probably pushing through. This is basically your overall trend here of what all could happen this season, unfortunately here. So now that we looked at our three main ingredients of the tropical triangle, it's now time to take a look at your seasonal outlook here from the European SEAS 5 model. This is your precipitation anomaly, and this is for this month right here. So we could basically look at this and see, is this verifying enough, or are we having issues verifying? Is this not going as planned? Is this model accurate, in other words? Well, let's take a look here. We could see definitely, above average precipitation across portions of the Caribbean here. Actually, coincidentally, right where Beryl went through. So I would honestly say that this is performing fairly well. We've also been seeing quite a bit of increased convection in those areas as well. A lot of general overall thunderstorm activity out here, which means this is indeed verifying thus far. And now here's a look at your August anomalies, and I really, really want to point out something extremely important here. So I'm going to just kind of highlight this in red just to make sure that we know what we're looking at here. Here is our precipitation anomalies for the month of August. You can see main development region getting quite active there, and you just see this belt of precipitation here. And really, this is a main concern. You can see it going through the main development region as well, through much of the Caribbean. And this is, in my opinion, the path where these tropical systems could take in the month of August here. And you realize here, we're talking straight through the Caribbean here, up through the southeast. Florida, you need to watch out extremely closely, especially toward late August here. But this arrow right here, that is the path of least resistance. Okay, here's a good way to think about that. You have your massive high pressure system across these areas here. I'll just kind of mark it like that. And you have a general steering flow that kind of goes like this, going around the high pressure system. This is essentially your wraparound pattern here. This is where your storms are going to go. More than likely, you might see some breaks, some waivers in this high pressure system, but the overall trend is right through those areas I just mentioned. So not to steal any other tropical weather YouTubers accumulate cyclone energy here, but you need to maintain situational awareness across these areas. And I'm talking about you guys here in the Lesser Antilles here, the Leeward, the Windward Islands, you are the front lines to this hurricane season. Anything that's going to go in the Caribbean or towards the U.S. is going straight through you guys first. So you need to be very alert to this. You need to get your hurricane plans, prepared here just in advance so you don't rush preparations when the time comes. Put yourself in a situation where if there's a major hurricane coming, what would I do? Next up is your September anomalies here, and we're looking at a much more of a mixed bag of precipitation here. You could see you have one route taking everything out to sea, which, I really hope that happens. That would be a really great sign. If they don't go out to sea, they're going to keep going through the main development region. And wow, look at that, exactly where I drew the paths in August here. The exact same spot here. This is why, again, everyone in the Lesser Antilles, the Caribbean, the Greater Antilles, Florida, especially Florida, hear me out there, the Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, needs to be watching super carefully here for systems that could sneak up through that way around the high pressure system. Now, moving into October here, again, still a bit of a mixed bag here. You're just going to kind of see development willy-nilly here, across the Atlantic. But despite all that, it looks like you get your defined textbook pattern back again here. Unfortunately, from what I'm seeing, you have that main development region track through the Caribbean up into the mid-Atlantic. It's the same exact cone here, unfortunately, but possibly shifted a little further south, because with climatology, over time, your tropical systems will get nudged off to the south here as your high pressure begins to strengthen again. So please, stay tropical weather aware and maintain situational awareness across those areas. I cannot express that enough. It's looking like a pretty dangerous season out there, and you need to stay aware and alert. And on top of all this, you need to be checking the National Hurricane Center, I would honestly say every single day, probably as we head more into early August, mid to late August, through the rest of the hurricane season. This basically will tell you where these hurricanes are occurring and where they could possibly go. So it's a very useful resource here at nationalhurricanecenter.noaa.gov. That is where you need to go for expert information on this hurricane season. And that about does everything with this video here. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, I'd recommend hitting the like button, as that'll help spread this through YouTube's algorithm. It'll help it get out to more and more people and help grow my side, my little corner of the weather community. Also, be sure to share this video with tons of your friends and family to get the word out, especially if they live in these tropical impacted regions here. They need to have a plan in place this hurricane season, and the time is now. They should not be waiting for when these systems occur, because that will be too late. But anyways, I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.